Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. Welcome to the University of Idaho and the 2017 Carmine Caruso International Jazz Trumpet Competition. We're really happy to be hosting it here in Moscow, Idaho. This morning, we have a student of Carmine Caruso's, a wonderful jazz trumpet player, professor of jazz studies at Indiana University. Please welcome Pat Harbison.
Hey, good morning. A couple things first off. A little personal things and some philosophical things. I think there's a reason that my two of my great teachers, Carmine Caruso and William Adam, never wrote books. The books that are out with their methods or their approaches in them are either written by their students or they're as told to kinds of books. That's true of Max Schlossberg. When the Schlossberg book came out, Schlossberg didn't write it. His son-in-law, who was a former student, wrote it. I don't know about Don Jacoby, if he wrote that book. Or
he actually did.
He actually did that one, okay. But every great teacher that I've ever encountered doesn't teach a method. They teach the people who are sitting in front of them. And so I've sat down and hung out and done the hive mind thing with tons and tons of Caruso students besides myself, and also with tons and tons of Bill Adams students besides myself. And there's a kind of a consensus, there's a common set of things they did, or there's a common approach or philosophy to how they taught and how their students play and practice, but it's not like it was a formula. So anytime you see a method book that turns something into a formula, you have to realize that that's not really how that person probably would have presented to you. And the other thing is that all those great teachers, it's not really the exercises. You play through Carmine's exercises any old way, and you haven't played the Caruso approach. You play through Bill Adams' daily routine any old way, and you haven't experienced what a Bill Adams student did sitting in his studio week after week, you know? So you get a pretty good idea of what these master teachers' approaches are if you can't get together with them, and in the case of people like Don Jacoby and Bill Adam and Carmine Caruso, who we're principally focusing on today, you get a better sense of who they are if you sit down and go through their stuff with somebody who spent lots and lots of time with them, you know? But that's not the same thing. So the disclaimer is, this is Pat. This is not Carmine standing up here. And I was lucky enough over a period of not quite 4 years to take between 50 and 60 lessons with Carmine, and he really changed my life, and he sort of gave me in a large part the career I have at a turning point. When I first went to Carmine, I was a frustrated trumpet player. I was this jazz guy who knew a bunch of tunes and could improvise and play tempos and had really good ears, but my chops were a mess. And I couldn't make it through a 3-hour gig and still play the fourth trumpet parts or cut the heads on the tunes I was playing. You know, I was the kid who in 9th grade was transcribing, Miles Davis solos and couldn't stand to sit down and play Harbison and Schlossberg, you know? And you remember that dude. Anyway, and like when I went to Carmine, I was on the verge of saying, oh, heck with it. I don't want to be a bad trumpet player. I'm going to start practicing the piano and become a composer arranger. And now I was like this close. And I said, I'm going to give this dude like a year and a half. And if I do exactly what he tells me to do, which by the way, I don't care who you're studying with, that's key. If I believe in this, if I commit to this, if I do exactly what he tells me to every day, if at the end of that year and a half, I'm not at least a functional trumpet player, I'm going to sit down and start practicing the piano and become a composer, you know? So it was that kind of turning point. When I went to Carmine, I was probably 21, You know, so I've been playing for a while, and I'd studied with some really good teachers whose teachings made a lot more sense in retrospect after I'd spent my years with Carmine, and I had some infrastructure set up and had an approach to the instrument. So, I don't know how much you know about Carmine Caruso, but he was a fascinating guy. He was not a brass player. And yet, most of us in the world today think of him as a teacher of brass players. Because I think brass players have more physical and psychological, let me emphasize that, and psychological problems in relating to themselves and the instrument. And he was this genius kind of troubleshooter who could look at a system and see what was broken and devise a way to fix it, you know? And so it didn't matter that he had spent his entire playing career as a saxophone player who doubled clarinet and violin in pit orchestras on Broadway and in vaudeville before that. He was playing in a Latin band in back old days, in a rumba cha-cha-cha band, right, you know? And the trumpet players got the chops all messed up, and Carmine looked at him and showed him how to fix it. He just could see, if you do this, this, and this, it ought to straighten it out. And it straightened it out, and these guys flipped out, and they went and told all their equally mentally and physically damaged trumpet player friends, and all of a sudden Carmine doesn't have time to play gigs anymore because he's got people around the neighborhood. So the other thing that was really cool for me in terms of, maybe I didn't know it at the time, but now as somebody who's a teacher, is that Carmine, like especially since I would fly in, the first probably, I don't know, year and a half I stayed with Carmine, I would fly into New York. I was living in Louisville. And I would fly into New York and I'd spend 3 days and I'd see him for a lesson every day for 3 days. And then I'd go home. But especially since I had flown in, he had this couch and these chairs set up in his studio. And if you had a lesson on Thursday, you could come in as early as you wanted to, and you could stay as long as you wanted to, and you could watch everybody else's lessons. So not only did I, and sometimes I checked out lessons over the phone, and I mean like landline phone, no video, anything. And I, heard him give Herb Alper a lesson over the phone once. I sat in on lessons with beginners. I sat in on lessons with cats who could really play, like Marvin Stamm. I sat in on lessons of tuba players, violin players, oboe players, flute players. And he basically taught all of the instruments the same things. He realized he had certain basic principles that he realized no matter what instrument you play, if you do these certain things, it will improve your ability to execute music. And he said, I teach clinically. I would also say he taught what I would say is an indirect method. His one book that he co-wrote as told to Herb Alpert was he called Musical Calisthenics for Brass. If you're a football player, it doesn't matter what you do when you're out running. It doesn't matter what you do when you're in the gym. The game doesn't look anything like that. But when you get on the field, if you've done the right stuff in the weight room, if you've run the right interval drills, if you've done the right agility drills, it improves your ability to play the game. And so what you did in the weight room transfers indirectly into the way you play. You don't think about how you played when you were playing the exercises. You let that gradually transform the way you relate to the instrument, and that transforms the way you play the music, no matter what kind of music it is. So it's not just that he didn't teach a classical player differently than a jazz player. He gave Vince Pensarella and Jim Thompson exactly the same exercises that he gave Randy Brecker and Victor Paz. He might have given them different variations on them because they were individual people, but there was no difference because he taught a clinical, mechanical approach. And he said that, and he kept stacks of business cards of other teachers on his desk, and he would say, if you know how you want the music to sound, and it's not coming out of your horn that way, then I can help you. I can help you eliminate the instrument as an obstacle. But if you don't know exactly how you want to play this passage or this style of music, if you need to be coached up on phrasing and articulation and style, and I remember 2 different lessons, one where he gave me Jimmy Maxwell's business card because all of a sudden I had to go play lead on a swing band, and I wasn't really a lead player, I was a beatopper, you know? And I remember him another time I had to go play a brass quintet gig that paid really great. And I wasn't sure how to do a certain style of articulation. He gave me Vince Pensarella's business card. All those business cards were almost all the business cards of his drinking buddies from down at the China Song, you know? And that's how the hang was. It was that thing. Okay, so, but he would teach you a clinical, calisthenic, mechanical approach to playing your instrument that worked with every instrument and worked with every style of music to fix aspects of your execution of music, okay? So what were the core principles? Well, number 1, if you play with perfect rhythm, and of course we always aspire to play with perfect rhythm, but nobody plays with perfect rhythm. You can always refine your rhythmic sense more. And this is the core thing. I see so much misconception of what his exercises are about because they're from the concepts are either from people who just got the book or they think they know what the exercises are. They're supposed to make you strong, and so it's like weightlifting. Carmine told me, I don't know how many times he said, trumpet playing isn't like weightlifting. It's like juggling. You don't have to be strong. You have to have your timing so that when the ball lands over there, that hand is there. And you get this flow of all the body parts moving in this perfect synchronization based on the demand of what you're trying to accomplish. Okay? So it's about timing. You watch a hurdler. What happens when they have, all those cats at the Olympics who are doing hurdles, they're all fast. The cat who has his personal best is the cat whose timing is the best. And he hits the gates at the right point in the stride, and his arms and the shift of his body weight and the left leg and the right leg, they all do what they're supposed to at exactly the right moment, in exactly the right kind of synchronization based on the demand of what they're going after. Does that make sense? Okay, so if you ever think that Caruso exercises are supposed to make you strong, then you are going to hurt yourself. You're going to screw yourself up, and you're going to contribute to the misconception and the mythology that Caruso's exercises are dangerous. Doing them wrong, and there's a lot of teachers who teach Caruso's exercises who don't understand it. They suffer from what I lovingly call cranial rectal inversion. If you have that kind of wrong approach, then yes, you're doing something dangerous, but you're also not doing Carmine Caruso's approach. Okay? His approach was that if you coordinate all the moving parts of your body that go into playing, if they're perfectly synchronized, then they will achieve a balance and you will get cleanliness and clarity in every line you play. And that's true of an organist, putting this finger down, lifting this finger up. It's true of a bassist playing with the bow and doing the bow change, and this finger goes down, this finger, all that stuff. As long as all the moving parts are synchronized, you will play cleanly and you will develop perfect technique. Okay, so I said something about psychology, and it's very important. The greatest teachers I know, and I would say Arnold Jacobs and all the Chicago guys, brass guys, William Adam and Carmine, they all knew the appropriate role for the conscious mind in the process of learning and playing, and the appropriate role for the unconscious mind. Okay? Everybody, like both Adam and Carmine in the very first lesson, told me to get the inner game of tennis and read it and translate everything in there that is relevant to tennis to playing the trumpet. And I would say still, Timothy Galloway's Inner Game of Tennis is the greatest book about music that wasn't written about music. And as good as the Inner Game of Music is, the Inner Game of Tennis is 100 times better. It's 100 times better. And if you haven't read the Inner Game of Tennis, I want to see a giant run on Inner Game of Tennis books on Amazon this afternoon. It's the killing book for learning skills at anything, but let's talk about this skill, okay? You gotta give your conscious mind something appropriate to do. Your conscious mind has to focus on one thing, and it has to be, if your conscious mind can focus on one thing, then you get rid of anxiety. You get rid of all the mental white noise most of us experience when we play, right? A quiet mind is necessary for concentration. Concentration is the most important thing in playing music, and concentration is a byproduct of achieving a state where your mind is quiet. Now, Kevin Durant experiences the same kind of quiet mind when he's shooting that a great trumpet player experiences when they're playing the trumpet. And I don't care what style it is, I don't care what pursuit it is. A great preacher or a great public speaker or a great golfer. What's the difference between Tiger Woods in the last 5 years and Tiger Woods when he was hitting it? It's not the physical thing, that's a symptom. The cause is the fact that he lost his quiet mind. What's the difference between Shaquille O'Neal shooting free throws, for those of you who are old enough to remember that, and Shaquille O'Neal, or whoever. It's like you can go, all those cats, they can't shoot free throws. And they can shoot a shot that far, somebody guard them. They panic and their mind's not quiet. They got too much mental white noise. Okay, so with Carmine, the idea of focusing your conscious mind when you were practicing his calisthenics on perfecting the rhythm, that gave your conscious mind an appropriate thing to do and allowed your unconscious mind to basically control everything else, which was a process of experimentation. It was a process of trial and error where your conscious mind stays out of the way and focuses on a goal. And the unconscious mind experiments, finds a strategy that works, and then turns it into a habit and eventually a reflex. Okay? The conscious mind focuses on perfecting the rhythm, and I'll give you more about that in a minute. And the unconscious mind actually experiments, tries out different strategies, and maybe your conscious mind might be this weird little third-person observer of, oh, my sound changed. Well, it feels like my lips adjusted their position, but I don't remember trying to do that. No, your conscious mind is the boss of you. In that, your unconscious mind is, and your conscious mind is focusing on observing what goes on like that with maybe 5% of your mind, and 95% of your thinking is on perfect rhythm, okay? So how do you play more accurate rhythm? You subdivide the beat. And that's the only thing when you're playing these exercises, these calisthenic exercises, your conscious mind should be doing. It's imagining the pitch and subdividing the beat. And the finer you can subdivide the beat, the more precise your rhythmic sense becomes. If I measure from here to the back exit in meters, I can get an accurate measurement. If I measure it in millimeters, I can get a more precise measure, right? So the smaller the unit of measure, the more accurate the measurement. So if I'm playing half notes and whole notes, and I'm thinking the beat, that's pretty accurate. If I'm thinking the eighth note, that's more accurate. If I'm thinking the 16th note, that's more accurate. Well, some people always say, well, you know, you go through the musical calisthenics for brass book, then if you were an advanced student, what would Carmine have you do? I'd say, well, basically, he'd have you do the very same exercises, but in your mind, you're subdividing every beat into 30-second notes instead of into 8 notes, because that refines your timing to yet a higher level. And when you refine your timing and you make the coordination more precise, more synchronous, you automatically get rid of the majority of your technical problems over time, just because your unconscious mind is masterful at figuring out how things work. As long as you keep your conscious mind out of the way and you shut down the white noise and the negative self-talk and all that self-help brain crap that we all know we need to do and most of us can't do. You know? Does that make sense? Okay, so it's almost like the exercises you do don't matter. I mean, Carmine said, you know, you can basically, once you understand this approach, you can apply it to anything. You can take that passage, it could be the crazy wide interval thing in the middle of the Anillo sonata, and you can slow that sucker down to 8 note equals 40 and then subdivide that beat. And when you can hear that and coordinate that by focusing on timing and play it accurately and cleanly, you can bring it up. You can bring the tempo. Why do we practice slowly? It's so we can perfect the coordination until we get a state of flow, and so we can perfect the coordination in a mental and emotional state that is quiet and happy and transparent. I like to use that word. If you are transparent, the music flows through you. And as soon as you're anxious, as soon as you're frustrated, the music, it's like all of a sudden somebody smeared Vaseline on your windshield. You know, all of a sudden I can't see. So I've got to stay in a quiet, mentally and emotionally transparent place in order to let the music flow through me. And that means teaching my conscious mind how to find a quiet place. Okay, so I haven't played a note yet. But you know, my very first lesson with Bill Adam, we played for 5 minutes at the end of the lesson. My very first lesson with Carmine, we played, it was only like 35 minutes long, and we played for 10 minutes at the end of the lesson. Because the preamble, setting your mind to the process and the state that we work in is very important. But it's very important you don't practice in such a way that there's any anxiety or any mild panic. You practice, you train your mind and body and heart to know that when you touch your instrument, no matter how late your playing was, how big the fight you had with your significant other was on the phone on the way from the airport, when you touch your instrument, you go to your transparent and happy place. We practice that. Okay? I don't need to practice anxiety, and I don't need to practice panic. I'm already really good at that. I trust myself to panic whenever I let myself get out of the quiet mind. Okay? That makes sense? Okay, so what are Carmine's exercises about? I would say if you want to get Carmine's book, which is he's listed as the author, it's an As Told to Herb Alpert book. It's called Musical Calisthenics for Brass. It's terrific, but without a proper understanding of how you do it. It's like going to the gym. If you use good form in the gym, you're going to get maximum benefit out of the exercise. If you use bad form in the gym, you're going to screw yourself up and you're going to be on the DL for the rest of the season. Okay? So it's not what the notes on the page are, it's how you go about them. What is your process? Where do you put your mind? How do you go about it? What do you attach value to and what do you let go? So Musical Calisthenics for Brass. There's a couple of other books that are actually really great that are written by Carmine's students and are their own personal methods that are founded in his pedagogy. One is called Flexus, which is written by Lori Frink and John McNeil, two of Carmine's students. And another one, which you have to translate into Trumpet, is a book called The American Trombone by Sam Burtis, B-U-R-T-I-S. And Sam also has a lot of stuff online. I forget what it is. It's something like the online trombone forum or something. If you Google Sam Burtis and Carmine Caruso, you'll find some of that stuff. And I have a lot of stuff on Carmine's approach, and so do some other people who've kind of contributed and done the hive mind thing on the Trumpet Herald. Now be very, very careful. It's kind of like the old maps before Columbus, quote unquote, discovered America, where you get to the edge of the world and it said there be monsters here, beyond here. If you get on Trumpet Herald, there's going to be some really great stuff on there, but there's also monsters. That's where I first met Kurt Thompson. I'm not going to say anything else. Okay? So y'all got to be careful about that. Kurt will be at my house and key in my car, like he did to one of my friends. So anyway, that's a big deal. Okay, that Trumpet Herald, there's a Carmine Caruso forum that has a lot of explanation that we sort of hive-minded from our own lessons and our memories and the notes we took during those years. And they serve as an explanation and a supplement to what's in Carmine's book. They're really, really great stuff on there. And I'm just sort of the moderator. I'm not saying that I'm the main compiler. I just make sure that the Kurt Thompsons of the world don't get in there and muck it up, okay? So the procedure. So the procedure's more important than what the actual exercises are, but I'm going to show you the first 3 exercises Carmine gave to basically everybody. And like I said, after that, even the stuff in the book you have to figure out, like what sequence works for you. On the Trumpet Herald Forum we found sort of a consensus that is how most of us went through at least the first 15 or 20 lessons. How he could put the material out there for us. In the book, they talk about 4 rules. This is the procedure. This is like going to the gym and using the right form when you're using the free weights, right? Number 1, blow steady. Carmine rarely talked about the air. He said, the more you talk about breathing and support, the more you put your mind into thinking about your body. Breathing is a natural thing. Taking in the air and putting the air out again is a natural thing. He said, just always blow steady. The air is either on or it's off. Don't have it be inconsistent. If the air is inconsistent, you create all kinds of challenges for the rest of your body, because if the air is inconsistent, the rest of your body has to constantly adjust in ways that would be unnecessary if the air was on all the time. And he used the analogy of a water skier where the boat keeps changing speeds. And it's really hard to stay up on the skis when the boat speeds up and slows down. Pretty soon your butt's in the water, right? So blow steady. The only other thing he ever told me about breathing was that your breath should be like a pendulum. It goes in and then it goes out. And the pendulum doesn't stop at the top. any more than a great golfer stops at their backswing at the top before they turn it around and put the club head through the ball. You're focused on putting your club head through the ball, and you take the air in until you start the sound. It's like a pendulum. No hesitation at the top, okay? That's the only thing he ever told me about the air. And I'm sure that was in specific response to something funky I was doing. Okay? So that's rule number 1. Rule number 2, subdivide every beat. And he was a firm believer in not using the metronome but tapping your foot. Now, with my students, I'll have them do that sometimes, but I'll have them, if they're going to be a quote-unquote classical musician, I'll have them eventually not tap their foot, because that's a social faux pas, that's just a social protocol, right? And if they're going to be a versatile musician who plays jazz and other things, I'll have them some days tap their foot and other days not tap their foot. If you're going to be a jazz musician and playing salsa bands and play funk bands, go ahead and tap your foot. We're playing dance music as quiet as it's kept among many young players today. Now, I just sounded like, hey, kid, get off my lawn. But you did. When we play jazz, when we play salsa, when we play funk, we still playing for dancers. Tonight, we're playing for dancers. Y'all just aren't lucky enough to have a dance floor here. And if we have a real pocket, you're going to wish you could get up and dance. So I see nothing. Playing an instrument is dancing that you listen to rather than watch, because all your body parts dance together. You dig that? It's easy to watch a drummer and see how they're dancing. It's hard to watch a trumpet player and see how they're dancing. But if all their body parts aren't dancing together because of the rhythm of the music, then they're not going to play cleanly. That's my interpretation from where I live of what Carmine's saying is. Okay, here's another Patism, and then I'll go back to Carmine. I practice often with the metronome, but I also practice sometimes with videos I've found on YouTube of Fred Astaire or the Nicholas brothers dancing. And I'll mute the sound, and I'll watch them dance, and I'll practice scales, and I'll play tunes, hooking my time up with the Nicholas brothers' feet. Because old school, that's what we do. Everything you play, if you play jazz, you play Latin music, you play funk, you are playing for the dancers. And if people are sitting in comfy chairs like that, you want them to wish there was a dance floor. Okay? Okay, that's back to me. Okay, now, Carmine. So, blow steady. Rule number 2, and this is not the order he puts them in the book, but this is the order I wish he had put them in the book. Rule number 2, subdivide every beat in your mind and tap your foot. With a few students who just can't get steady time early in their early lessons, I'll have them use a metronome. But for his stuff, I want the feeling of rhythm to come from inside of them. Each one of us, into every ensemble situation we go, bring our own internal clock. Okay? So you're tapping foot and you're mentally subdividing the beat. That time and that demand for coordination and synchronization comes from within you. Then when you go to play with a band, you listen to everybody else, and we make those minute adjustments so we all synchronize our internal clocks and play together. But you've got to bring your internal sense of time into that playing situation. Okay? Blow steady, subdivide every beat. Then rules 3 and 4, here's where the perilous misconceptions come from. And watch me, well, let me watch my time. Oh, I'm swinging. I really want to pair these together. You want to play everything in a given exercise on one setting with like whatever embouchure, whatever placement of the horn on your lips, whatever placement of your lips in relation to one another. You don't ever consciously adjust them. and you don't allow them to adjust themselves when you're not playing. I mean, there's got to be rests in there. There's got to be a time to take a breath. So that's where the other rule comes from. You take your breath through your nose only when you're doing these calisthenics, not when you're playing music. The procedures here, I mean, if you're picking up something heavy, I mean, good lifting mechanics so you don't screw up your back are important when you're moving furniture, but you don't have the same rules about form necessarily that you have when you're in the gym lifting weights. Okay? So when you're applying Carmine's approach to clinical calisthenic practice, wherever you start, you leave the setting there. When it's time to breathe, you don't adjust your lips, take the horn off your face, adjust the lips in relationship to the mouthpiece or to each other. That doesn't mean you hold them rigidly in position while you're playing. You allow your unconscious mind to make adjustments. You let the lips work inside the mouthpiece, but you don't move them or adjust them in between while you're breathing. And the only way you can do that, really, is to breathe through your nose. Now, allergy season in the Midwest, I can't breathe through my nose. So then I try to breathe through the mouth corners without disrupting this, but that's a lot riskier, than breathing through the nose is, okay? So you got to take a long breath if you're doing nose breathing in order to get a full breath, right? Okay. So those are the 4 rules. Blow steady, subdivide every beat in your mind. If you're playing a whole note or you're resting, you're still subdividing the time. Rests are part of the rhythm just as much as notes are. If we don't swing the rest, we don't swing the notes. Okay? You don't adjust your lips on the rests, and you keep the same basic setup through the entire exercise, and in order to do that, you breathe through your nose. That's only for Carmine's exercises. Now I'm going to bring the piano bench over here because I can't tap my foot standing up. At least not without messing up the feng shui of my body mechanics. So I'm probably off camera now, but I'll be right back. Okay. I'm also lightening the load here for a moment. Okay, so the first exercise Carmine had everybody do, and he said, first of all, you can apply what I do to any other approach. He said, to do what I do, you don't have to stop practicing. He said, I don't care if you also study with Jerry Callett, or you also study with Vince Panzarella, or you study with Bill Adam, or you do Maggio, or whatever. It doesn't matter what approach you use. If you coordinate all the moving parts, that approach will work better. So this is a supplement to any other thing. It's not a discrete thing where you got to quit practicing all the other stuff you do. And for the first year I studied with Carmine, what he assigned me never took more than 30 to 40 minutes, even when I got it kind of built up. In the first couple of lessons, it was only like maybe 20 minutes worth of stuff. I'm not practicing only 20 minutes a day. I'm going and getting my Clark book out, and I'm doing tonguing stuff out of the Ernest Williams method, and I'm learning bebop tunes. It's just a supplement, okay? So the very first exercise, which is the first exercise in musical calisthenics for brass, and is also the first exercise in Flexus, and Lori and John have a number of variations that you can apply to it. Carmine just has the basic exercise. So if you want to take that farther after you've worked your way through musical calisthenics for brass, getting the Flexus book is really great. It's what he called the 6 notes. It's the 6 notes chromatically from G. Concert F if you're doing it on B flat trumpet. And he said, by the way, what you should do these exercises on whatever you consider your principal horn. If you're a C trumpet player, you do them on C trumpet. I sat in on a lesson with Art Farmer. Art did them on flute horn. you know? And he said if you want to be a really great doubler, if you want to really play flugelhorn and trumpet equally well, you really want to play B flat and C equally well, you'll do all these exercises on both horns every day. That's what it means to do them equally well. Sam Burtis, who plays tenor trombone, bass trombone, tuba, and God knows what else. I know he does all of his Carmine routine on tenor trombone, bass trombone, and tuba every day, and he says that's the only way he can go to the studio and play all three of those instruments at a high level. If you're going to be a doubler, you've got to practice more. You know? All right. So, the 6 notes. It's the 6 notes from G up to C. 2 half notes and a whole note. 4 counts of rest where I let the stale air out, and then for 2 or 3 counts draw the good air in through my nose. While I'm resting, my embouchure stays in the position it was in when I finished the last sound I played, so that I start the next note in exactly the same position. It's not like I hold this or do some kind of isometric or anything. I just don't let it adjust. Okay? So the other thing is, the first sound you play after each rest, you breath attack. Now, Carmine just said breath attack. I say that you use a P attack, because I have found with students that if I say breath attack, sometimes they engage the glottis and there's this little weird grunt, and they go, ooh, you know, and you don't want to engage the back of the throat like that. So if I say P, it means that I start the note with my lips together inside of the mouthpiece. So when I tongue, I use the T or the D for my single tongue. And so I'll go, pa, da, da. And I'm thinking, 1 E and a 2 E and a da, 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 even on the rest, even while I'm breathing. Especially on the beat before I re-articulate or before I start the note after the breath. Because you know that when the band starts together, when the first attack is clean, when the first beat of the first bar of the chart is swinging, it's because the count-off is swinging. The preparatory beat was precise. So beat 4, when there's nothing happening audibly, I'm still subdividing that. I'm playing the space between the notes just as rhythmically as I'm playing the notes. Right? Music is sound in silence. And if the silence don't swing, the sound won't swing. Right? I remember one night I had this revelation. I was sitting behind, it was at Sweet Basil's, and I would pretend to go to the bathroom a lot because that meant I could stand behind Jimmy Cobb and look over his shoulder. And Jimmy Cobb, man, band leader, it was Kenny Vern. Kenny was like, man, he wouldn't even be counting yet. He had this going on, and Jimmy's already like in the pocket. Nobody's doing anything, and Kenny and Jimmy are already like big time in the groove. So what's happening in bar 1? Spam! Not loud, but conviction, because he's already been grooving on that feel for 4 bars or 6 bars. As soon as he saw Kenny start to snap. Same thing. Great conductor, boom. Right? Same thing with us. Take that breath in rhythmically, breathe all the way till you start the note, boom. Subdivide that beat where you're breathing, okay? So I'm going to go pa, 3, 4 E and a pa, da, da. The whole time I'm thinking 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. It could not be simpler, but that doesn't mean it's not effective. Okay? And the air is on the whole time. So when I re-articulate, my tongue acts on the air column, but the air column is unvarying. It's like the water coming out of the faucet. You put your finger underneath it, it doesn't stop the water. That's the image, okay? I'm going to do this. 1, 2, E, and a. Now, I warmed up a little bit before I started this clinic today. If I had picked the horn up cold, that first breath attack probably would have sputtered, especially if I played a salsa gig the night before or something, right? Or did a double hit or something. You play in perfect rhythm and act as if everything that's coming out is golden. You place the demand of perfect rhythm, and you don't stop, wait, adjust anything with your conscious mind. Okay? So I hear people like doing Carmine's thing, and I can tell they're not thinking about the timing. It's not about the strength, remember that, it's about the coordination. I hear people doing like the flexibility stuff out of Flexus, and they're just doing it like it's stuff out of Charles Cullen's like lip drill, lip flexibility. No, everything is on the end of. So if you're going to do, I'm still thinking about the pocket. I wanted to go faster. What did I do? I went faster in relationship to the tempo, but it's all about the groove, because the groove makes the body coordinate itself. Okay? And so like Carmine would have like those lip flexibility things in Lori and John's book, in Flexus. Carmine would have us practice Clark studies that way. But he would say, here's the tempo, you subdivide the beat, 1 and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a... Still keeping the same groove, the same relationship to that subdivided time. Okay? Okay, so that's, the Clarks were one of the things that he had us do as a supplement that's not in the musical calisthenics for brass book. He also had us practice out of the Behrman clarinet method, because he said that clarinet method, which is something he had grown up with, which has tons of scales and arpeggios, used a realistic modern trumpet player's range, because it went from pedal F to ledger lines F. He said, the Clark book's the only other trumpet book I've seen that everybody uses that actually uses the real range of the trumpet that people have to play today. So, okay, so what time is it? I don't want to shut up. Got 10 minutes? Okay, so let me just quickly, there were some lip flexibility kinds of things that he would do. Same thing, it wasn't about speed, it was about timing. Then the other thing, and again, a place where I see people screwing up and getting themselves into a world of trouble, is with the interval studies, and in the Musical Calisthenics for Brass book, there's tons of those interval studies. Lori and John didn't even put anything like the interval studies in there. I think because they realized that without like supervision, a trained driver on a closed course, it was real possible for people to screw themselves up. But Carmine said, look, all music, regardless of what style it is, consists of a sequence of notes, and every note in any phrase you're ever going to play is separated from the previous note and the following note by some interval. So if your ear learns to hear those intervals accurately, and if your body learns mechanically to execute those intervals accurately, then any lick you play, regardless of the style of music you're going to play, you're going to execute it more clearly. So if you learn how to play the interval of a second from any note going in any direction with any kind of dynamic thing, then you're going to play licks that include seconds cleaner. If you learn to do thirds and then fourths and then fifths up to octaves, and I heard some advanced students, I know he had Victor Paz practicing tenths one day when I heard him like shedding in a lesson. But the thing is, basically, the timing makes the change from note to note as close to instantaneous and synchronous as we can make it. We hear the interval accurately, and with sheer animal repetition, our unconscious mind figures out how to do what the conscious mind is demanding, lovingly, and it improves whatever you're playing, and it makes a habit out of the most effective physical approach. You do not try or think about what you're doing physically. You don't think about anything except 95% of your mind is thinking about perfect rhythm, and 5% of your mind is thinking about keeping the blow steady. Okay? So I'm going to do, so like for my first lesson, he had me do the 6 notes exercise, key of C starting on a G. He said that's like a nice middle register setting. You're not setting up flabby for the low register. You're not setting up tight for the high register. You're setting up for the cash register, right in the middle of the staff, right? Which is where all the money's made, okay? So you start on G and you do key of C. You ascend in seconds. And you go up until your system fails. Again, it's just like going to the gym. You do certain exercises. You don't change, you keep your perfect form, and you go until you fail. Then you rest, and then you start where you fail, and you do another set, and you go to where you fail again. And then you leave it. And that's what you do with that exercise. Okay? Problem is, people start thinking it's about strength, and they start manipulating their embouchure, and they start forcing it and pushing. It's not gonna feel great at first until your chops find balance. Everybody uses pressure to play a high A. I don't care who you are. You know, you look at Bill Chase or Maynard or Arturo or Wayne Bergeron. Those cats, Tony Cadley, they use pressure to play high A. They don't use pressure to play a one ledger line A because their system is better balanced than my system or your system. Okay? So that I'm going to do fourths. I'm just picking that out randomly. You can do this in the book, in the Musical Calisthenics for Brass book. He goes through all the diatonic intervals up to the octave, and then he also adds crescendos, decrescendos in various configurations. I'm going to do it just room temperature volume. Okay? I'm subdividing. I'm breath attacking the first note. It's pa. The air's on until it's off. Okay? 1, the end of 2, the end of. fails, I go to the next rest. Because sometimes my unconscious mind will adjust something and it'll start coming out again. And I'll go up for another third. Now, I started using quote unquote too much pressure at the top of the staff. I don't use too much pressure at the top of the staff. Not when I'm playing normally. This is where the form of the exercise places specific demands on your body to optimize what you get out of the exercise. And if I don't think about adjusting my armature and tightening my buzz and all that crazy crap, then I'm not going to hurt myself because I'm going to fail before I get to the point where I hurt my armature. Okay? So, top of the staff, I'm having blowouts on both sides of my mouth. If you're sitting next to me and you're playing that book, you better hope I brought a towel to share with you. Because they're sprayed up crazy, you know? But you know what? Boom, it's what's going out there, you know? It's not my sound when I'm above the staff, because I set up for the middle register, and I'm carrying that setup all the way up. I will eventually carry that setup even down into the pedal register, so I'm playing 4 octaves on the same setup. Does it sound pretty? No, but it puts the right physical and rhythmic demands to train my body. And it's a supplement to other kinds of practice you do where you work on playing with a good sound and optimizing the musicality. This is totally calisthenic. Okay? So there you go. There's just enough information to cause trouble. Now, I got questions. Answer questions. Marcus, there you go.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Professor. This is awesome. I've heard in the past that you're not supposed to do them like more than 3 or 4 times a week. Can you tell me?
He told me that the whole time I studied with him, this was the first thing I did every day. Now, when I'm doing these, and it may be when I have a week when I'm not playing a lot, I'll play like my Bill Adams routine first, and I'll do these like with my afternoon thing after I got in there, you know? But it's important not to do them on tired chops, on swollen chops, on stiff chops. When you do something like this and your chops are already tired or swollen or stiff, then you start coming up with strategies to compensate for your chops being all messed up. You know, and that's when you start doing all this wild, crazy stuff, and that starts to become how you play. So you want to do it on fresh chops that are happening. So if I've got a week where I'm gigging a lot, or I've got a week where I'm playing with the salsa band, I may not do these, or I may just dial it back and do 2 or 3 exercises in the middle of my routine. I'm going to spend a lot more time trying to undo the fact that I just played all night Montunos with a bunch of high Fs in them, 5-tay, and I couldn't hear myself. All I could hear was timbales, you know? So yes, the other thing is there's a couple of things that aren't in his books, and I don't think they're even in Lori and John's book, about recovery exercises that balance this out. One is the idea of breath attacking the low F sharp triple piano. You take a full breath, and you hold that sucker all the way out till you're out of breath, as soft as you possibly can, a whisper tone. And if that note stops speaking, you still blow the air as if a golden sound is coming out. And that, with repetition 3, 4, 5 times after you beat yourself up, like the first time I ever played with Snooky Young, it's like, that's all he did to warm up. He sat back there and like everybody else is like looking at the parts and stuff, Snooky's back there going. You couldn't hear it. And then, of course, the very first downbeat was like Fat City, you know? But, like, so, did. All the way to the end of the breath. Now, when I'm trying to blow the air as steadily, as smooth, like right across the surface of the pond as I possibly can. And when you hear ripples and the sound and wobbles and pitch changes, that's the trauma I just put my chops through working itself out. So I'll do that 3, 4, 5 times after I play one of these strenuous exercises, or on the break for the 4th set of my second gig. You know, and so that's one thing. The other thing is, and like, I usually do this on the G and the staff and sometimes on some of the other open partials, but for most people, G and the staff's great. I'm gonna have my lips inside the mouthpiece, not touching. So I'm thinking again, I'm thinking rhythmically, I'm subdividing the beat, and I'm gonna blow 4 counts of just air between my chops with an open aperture. On beat 1, I close my chops to the point where the note speaks, but I don't change my air. And I hold the whole note. And on beat 1 of the next bar, I open my chops, and I blow just air. So you resensitize, figure that point, where that point is, where the lips are just touching and the standing wave is turning the air into sound, right? So they. Start right away. First of all, if you've mashed your chops up because the drummer's too damn loud and the guy hasn't got you in the monitor right, that reestablishes that feeling inside the mouthpiece and that sense of where that place is, where your lips are just touching and you're getting the optimal amount of product for the minimal amount of effort. You know, you find that balance point again. So he had me do those from lesson 1. And those aren't in either of those books, and I don't know if I can't remember if Sam Burtis put anything like that in his book or not. But that was an absolute, and he said you can't do those too much. You learn to use those throughout your playing day just to make sure you never get out of balance. Yeah, Dominick.
Yeah, you just kind of touched on it, so maybe you can expand in a moment. So, yeah, so we know that, in this situation there's less variable. But when you get on a bandstand and you're dealing with monitors, sound guys, got sound in the room, somebody playing so loud. So can you expand a little bit more about how you achieve that balance? Because I think, a lot of us can maybe relate, like it feels great to practice room, and then if you're out of balance at the first tune of the gig, like, your chops are
right. So he had me do a few things actually, and I'll go a little farther into what I do, and I'm sure like you and Marcus especially have the same kinds of things you learn to do too. I told him that, like, I went in the studio, so I was like doing somebody's demo, and like the studio's so dead, and I'm in the isolation room, and blah blah blah, and the headphone mix isn't right. And he said, okay, here's what you do. You got a walk-in closet at your apartment? I said, yes. With all the clothes, the winter coats hanging in? Yes. He said, every day, go in that closet and play a couple times for 20 minutes. Get used to the idea that you're not going to get the feedback to your ears that you want. You have to play when the sound coming back to your ears isn't right, and we all know, those of us who've been around very long at all, that life is a series of unfortunate acoustic circumstances. You dig? And so, look, if the cats on the band aren't jerks, and the music's good, and the sound is right, and the audience is into it, kill me now, because it ain't gonna get no better. And like if I have one gig like that a year, that keeps me playing for the rest of the year. Okay? If 3 of those are happening, I am a god. Okay, so you have to learn in circumstances where the sound isn't right. The monitor mix is terrible, or there are no monitors, the drummer's too loud, can't hear the bass, what's coming back in the monitors is all highs and no lows, or whatever it is. You have to learn to play to the sound of the little trumpet player in your imagination. And the little trumpet player in imagination has to override the sound of the trumpet in the room. In my dream setting, that ain't gonna happen, but in my reality, that happens 80% of the time. Even if it's just that the EQ's on. So part of what the quiet mind teaches you is to keep your eye on the ball. And the target when you're playing the trumpet is what you imagine It's not like you're hitting a tennis ball or a baseball where there's a tangible physical thing flying at you and you can keep your eye on that ball. When you're playing, the target doesn't exist except in your imagination until it's already out in the room and it's too late to change it. So you can't worry about that sound. At a certain point, you just have to chalk it up. You have to play this sound and like focus your conscious mind there on keeping your eye on the ball, on hearing this in as high res as you possibly can with as much musical detail as you possibly can. And then you trust that if you can do that, the actual sound in the room is going to be as close to that as it possibly will be. That's why we practice. You know? All right. Cool. That was great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it so much.